Well, welcome everybody to preparation for our second session in the cycle of volunteer engagement. And you've really done a lot so far. One of the things you've done is you've written a philosophy statement for your program. And this is one that in an earlier session, the participants wrote that has always struck me as particularly good. It just has a lot of words in it that I think have power. And it's for TwistWorks. And TwistWorks recruits and prepares volunteers to expand the organization's capacity to increase economic and cultural vitality in the Methow Valley. Volunteers share their unique skills and knowledge to extend and enhance the work of TwistWorks and to serve as ambassadors and advocates in the community. I just thought the words like expand and increase and extend and enhance were powerful verbs and might be worth borrowing. So to remind us, the purpose of our training is to identify all the elements of effective volunteer engagement and then explore strategies for your program. And you've already assessed your program to some degree. You're going to be asked to develop two things that you're going to do pretty quickly to enhance your program. And then we're going to help you learn about additional resources and assistance. But sometimes the best way to look at how a program can be good is to recall a bad experience. And I have found that a great number of people I know, colleagues in the profession, entered volunteer management partly because of some bad experiences. There has to be a way to do it better. So I'm asking you to recall when you've had a bad experience as a volunteer and to look at what made it so poor and be ready to share your experience when we meet. There are so many examples. I know I once showed up to volunteer and I really rushed to get there because it was my first time and I wanted to do it right. And I got there barely in the nick of time when I promised to be there. And the person who was supposed to supervise me came out and said, "Oh dear, we totally forgot you were coming today. Oh, we'll find you something to do." Now that was a bad experience. So think about your bad experience and we'll share some of the worst at our next session. So last time we looked at how we understand volunteers and establish a foundation. This time we're going to look at what do our volunteer position descriptions look like? What makes them effective? How do we market them? And once we've attracted people, how do we screen them, interview them, orient and train them so they'll be ready to hit the ground running? Many people do volunteer position descriptions as if their only goal was to tell the volunteer what he or she is supposed to do. But they're more complex than that. They need to tell, why are you doing this? What's the goal or objectives of this position? What need are you filling? What role are you playing? That's where the real description of duties comes in. What skills do you need to bring, or are we going to give you? How much time does it take per shift? How long do you sign up for? And here's what many, many descriptions leave out. What are the benefits? Now, I mentioned earlier that we're not a nation of masochists. People are getting benefits from volunteering or they would not do it. And so what can they gain from this position? Can they make valuable contacts in the community? Can they have fun working with a group of like-minded people on projects? Can they gain new skills? Can they influence the community? What are they getting out of it? And then most descriptions have some sort of miscellaneous information at the bottom, like something like you must wear closed-toed shoes, or some such thing that they just need to know. And there's a wonderful resource in your workbook for creating a great job description. It's on pages 10 and 11. And you need to take a current volunteer position description and then update it using that tool, because it can help you make it stronger. Once you've done one, you have a good model for doing others. You might also want to give it a new title. I've found many volunteer position descriptions have really boring titles. See if you can come up with something a little livelier. So you got this great position description. So how do you recruit volunteers? There are 3 ways to do this, and they all have a place. If you're looking for volunteers for an event, perhaps, they're going to work one shift and just about anybody can do it, then you do what's called warm body recruitment. If their breath can fog up a mirror, they can probably do this. Let's say you're having a benefit race for your organization. You need lots of people to hand out T-shirts and do the timing and encourage volunteers and give aid where needed. But anybody can do it, and so you recruit lots of people. Some of them may stick around then to do more things. The most common method of recruiting is concentric circle. You already have volunteers. Whom do they know? Whom might they ask? Who might come in and serve with them? This is very effective. And some organizations even do an each one, reach one, like a contest to encourage everybody to bring somebody else in. It works really well. The challenge is that most people have friends who are a lot like them in age and ethnicity and even in viewpoint. And so it doesn't build diversity in your program. It tends to create a program where people are a lot alike. Then what takes more time and effort, but is extremely important, is targeted recruitment. For a particular position, what do you need? Whom do you need? Where do people like that hang out? How might you ask them? Who might best ask them so that you get the particular people you need to perform a particular function in your organization? And once you've done that, you need to figure out, okay, if that's your audience, how do I speak directly to them? Because as Rick Litch remarked, and I think this is so true, when you send a message to the community in general, you often wind up speaking to no one in particular. I work a great deal with faith-based organizations, and we call that kind of recruitment the spray and pray method. You spray a message out there and pray somebody will respond, and generally they don't, because it's not specific enough. So you're going to create a recruitment message for the position that you developed so well, that position description. But it's going to be sort of upside down from the position description, because you start with the benefits, with what you put at the bottom of your description, because that's what's going to draw people in. Once you get their attention, then you can tell them more of the descriptive elements of what they'll be doing and when and with whom and whatever. But every good recruitment message starts with benefits. And note, it doesn't start with what your organization needs. Your needs are not anybody else's motivation. So you start with, learn a new skill and participate in a great community event. That's not a good line, but it gives you an idea of, why would somebody volunteer for this? And then from there, you build the rest of your message. So you choose your target. Who would have the kind of skills and interests that this position requires? What would be appealing to them? That's where you put the benefits. And then you don't list what are possible barriers, but you override them. Let's say that it might involve their taking public transportation to get there. So you might say direct expenses reimbursed. And then you look at what strategies can you use to reach that particular audience. If you're looking for 20 or 30-year-olds, you probably aren't going to depend much on print media. They're probably not newspaper readers or subscribers. What do they watch on or look at on social media? Where might you put your message where people that you're looking for will see it? And that requires some strategic planning, and sometimes it requires interviewing some of your current volunteers. Where, if I were to look for somebody to volunteer here, where would I put the message? They can give you some really good ideas. Then you develop the message and keep that ideal volunteer in mind, and you craft that message and you bring it with you when we meet so you can share it. There is guidance for that in your workbook and some of the pre-planning, so you can come ready to share your message, and we would love to hear it. So how do you get it out? You've gotten it all formed and it's saying just the right thing. Well, as we mentioned, you look at how would that audience receive the message. Let's say that what you're recruiting for, probably retired people would be best simply because of the flexibility of schedules. They're probably not going to get the message from social media. They might, but probably not. They would love to see you or somebody from your organization, maybe ideally somebody from their age group who's already a volunteer, come and give a talk at their retirement center. A human being coming and sharing is going to draw them in much more than a social media message. But, you just need, whatever your group is, you need to figure out, how do I get the message to them? And let's say it's worked and you're bringing in some people who are potential volunteers, but you need to screen them. You need to see whether are they appropriate for this, because if they're not appropriate, it's not good for your organization and it's not good for them. They're not going to be happy. So screening actually begins with that position description. If there's something in there that tells people, oh, you have to do it on site and I can't get there, so that won't work. Or it's during business hours and I'm employed 9 to 5, that won't work. It screens out people that can't do what you're looking at. And then your recruitment message can make it clear. If somebody is a real introvert and your message makes it clear that they're working in a group, they might think, that's not for me. And if they phone your program or your agency, the phone intake is so important because they're going to ask some questions when they call. Whoever's answering the phone needs to be equipped to give them information, which may screen them out. Like, oh, that's not going to work for me. And you probably have a written application, ideally available on your website, that they can fill out online. And some of the questions it asks will make it clear to them that, no, I think I'll stop filling this out. It's not for me. If they've applied and everything looks as if it can work, then you schedule an interview with them, and we'll talk more about that later. You may want to do reference checks. You may ask on your application for references and then follow up with them. You may think that, well, anybody lists the reference is just going to list their best friends and I'm not going to learn anything, but you can learn some interesting things. The important thing, though, is if you ask for references for a particular position and you check those references for one or more of the candidates for that position, you legally have to check them for all of the candidates for that position. You can't say, oh, that one's the son of a board member, I don't need to check references on him. If you've checked them on others, you need to check on those. Why would you check them? Well, I remember when I was running a crisis line and it looked like a really good application, and I checked with a reference and I said, one of the important things here is that timeliness. People have to show up on time for their shifts at the telephone room for the crisis line. And this reference says, Jim is a wonderful guy, but I've never known him to be on time for everything. This might not be the job for him. Then background checks for some positions, especially if you're working with money or with vulnerable people or with children, you might want to do background checks. And if so, they need to be done for everybody for that position. And then if it's a really complicated position or one with a lot of responsibility, you might want to give them a skills test or have them do role plays. That isn't what you do for most positions, but for some, they help. And when you do this well, a good match results in higher performance. Obviously, if you're in the right position, you do it better. If you're doing it well, you're happier, you're going to stick around, and you're not going to be a risk to yourself or to the organization. So working for a good match is worth it.